And we are live. Welcome, everybody. This is For the Love of Learning, Voices of the Alternative Education Movement. I'm Lady Liberty, and this is episode number 4. The theme of tonight's episode is Connected Families and Connected Learning. Tonight, we're going to have a conversation about how trust, parenting, and connectedness play a role in learning. Most people don't make that connection, but tonight you'll hear from a panel of amazing women who do. Each of the women on our panel bring a unique approach to integrative learning. First, let's meet Josha, a clinical mental health counselor working with families and children who have experienced developmental trauma. She is also a parenting and self-awareness coach who advocates using parenting as a tool for personal growth. So welcome, Josha, to tonight's panel. Next, I'd like to introduce Zahra. Zahra is known for empowering parents to inspire their children to lead fulfilling lives through direct parent coaching and assisting in designing alternative homeschool programs. She works to create consciousness-based learning environments that fully support children in reaching their unlimited potential. So welcome, Zahra. We're so happy to have you here tonight, too. And finally, I'd like to introduce Julie. Julie is an inspirational speaker, a creative living coach, a blogger, and an unschooling mom, and a best-selling author of her award-winning memoir, Nothing Short of Joy. Julie mentors spirit-led creatives on how to live outside the BS, which is belief systems, and use self-expression to transform life's grief and to energize it into ginormous joy. Welcome, Julie, and we are so thrilled you're here on tonight's panel, too. So you guys have no idea. You have no idea how much I was looking forward to tonight's show. I really want to jump right in. And Julie, let's start with you. Could you please tell us a little bit more about your background and share with us how you made the discovery in your life that parenting and learning are actually connected?
Gosh, I'm going to have to go back in time to my greatest challenge, which has been my greatest teacher, and that was being born with dwarfism and arthritis and all of the trouble that brought me. It made me feel in the beginning that I was not a part of this world, that I didn't belong, that I was defective and unlovable, and this feeling like an outcast, that I was marginalized, caused me over time to start to go inside, to realize that everything I tried to get approval and love from the outside world just kind of backfired and didn't last. And in my 20s, I found self-help books and books on spirituality, and it just opened my eyes to how much I was standing in my own way with the beliefs that I had adopted from the way I'd been treated. And interestingly enough, the fact that I was early in my life feeling outside the system and then kind of clawing my way trying to be a part of the system taught me how sort of useless that was. And so when my kids were born, I already had a lot of years of wanting to understand myself and wanting to come to peace with who I really was and not who others said I was. And so when the time came to register my son for kindergarten, we walked into the office and there was just such a lack of love and connection that everything inside me, which understood that it was okay to be outside the lines of society, that it was all right to turn away from the status quo, it served me. And we just said, I think we're going to try kindergarten on our own, because something was just gnawing at me that it wasn't going to be this growth-filled, loving, harmonious environment. So all of the things that felt the biggest burden in my life became what allowed me to explore other options and to realize there was a whole community of unschoolers and homeschoolers and alternative ways of learning that I'd never in my life thought about until that voice inside that was uncomfortable with the current system said to me, turn around and keep looking. And slowly I've connected with people like you and all of you, that finding our own community and a heart-centered connection has been it's scary at times, it's exciting at times, it feels like, it's an unfolding mystery, but it's wonderful too, and there's so many more options than I ever realized, so many more possibilities for myself and my kids. So we're doing this together. The connected learning is really the truth because I learned so much from them. I learned from our separate journeys, our journeys together. They're watching me build a business. I'm watching them, choosing things that I wouldn't choose, but trusting that they have a calling, their soul has a purpose that I may not know, but I have faith in the unfolding because my life has unfolded in ways I never could have imagined. So
It's amazing. I didn't want this to be an unschooling panel, but three of us are unschooling parents on the panel, and it looks like we lost Zahra. I hope her connection is okay. She's actually tuning in from New Zealand right now, and I hope she joins the conversation again because I really want to hear what she has to say. But I think, Julie, you touched on something really, really powerful, and that was your journey took you to a place that it allowed you to trust your inner voice, which allowed you to guide your parenting choices for your children. And that's something that, in conventional mainstream life, we're really told to ignore. So bravo to you for, tapping into that, doing your work, and being an advocate for your kids. So incredible. Thank you.
thank you.
And Josha, I want to ask you the same question. First, if you can tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you to this place, and then how you realized that parenting and learning are connected.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Am I unmuted? Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Julie. I loved listening to that little snippet of your story. And while I know that our stories are very different, but as I was listening, they're very, very similar. And my own journey was really about emotional discomfort and disconnect. And I guess in my in my 20s, and I feel like I was very, very disconnected spiritually and emotionally, and my kind of breakdown, and I call it kind of like a spiritual emotional crisis, and I went on a spiritual seeking journey, and that was the primary force in my life to be more clear and more present. And so I did that for a very long time. And then it was really connecting that with my parenting when I had kids. And so I just really feel like it was putting all those spiritual lessons into practice when my kids came along. And actually, similarly, it was around the kindergarten time for us too with my first son. And it was like, kindergarten, you have to do school. And I was still in that, kind of in that still societal programming. I had broken through a lot of other barriers, but I was still like, okay, he's got to go to school now. And I went to the school too, and I was like, ugh, no, this is not okay, and it just doesn't feel good, and it doesn't resonate with really what I had experienced up until then was like a real reverence for this person that I lived with, and like, wow, how can I give him the best, most clear, loving environment? And it wasn't the school. We did do Waldorf school, which was kind of like a little bridge for us because I didn't feel capable of really holding all of that learning for our family, just for myself being a homeschool mom. So we did do a little bit of Waldorf, and then he loved it until about first grade, and then it fell apart, and then it was like, okay, this homeschooling thing, let me figure it out, and then eventually that transitioned into more of an unschooling environment because the schooling aspect that I thought I had to do felt wrong too, and it didn't feel connected. So then we are unschoolers now. So
we're going to talk a lot about being connected tonight, Josha, but I love your story, and I love that both you and Julie were so tapped in and tuned on. When your kids were in kindergarten, it took me to my son was 10 years old to even realize that I had a say in my son's education, and that, you know, it was a joint process. So I'm so grateful that you guys are here sharing your journey with us as parents, and also as teachers and counselors and mentors to other families. I want to move on to Zahra, and I'm so happy you're back. You probably missed the question, but the question is if you could please share with us a little bit of your background and what brought you to this point, and how you came to the idea, the knowledge that parenting and learning are connected.
Yeah, I'd love to, and I'm sorry I missed the first piece there. I would love to have heard everybody's story, but my computer decided to turn itself off instantly, and I've learned to just roll with the technology thing, so here I am back again. So thank you, and thank you for having me on this radio show. I came to this a lot later, I think, than everybody else. I didn't really know anything about different kinds of progressive education, and or even have the thought to take it on myself when my son was still of school age. He's 27 now. But what happened to me was an awakening as a teacher inside traditional schooling. And I was always so excited every time we got to do a new program, right? Something that really felt like, yeah, this is so much better. Let's do this. And then finding that our hands were tied, literally, to actually do any of it properly. We're always just adding new things in. So in early 2004, I got this spiritual calling to just to step out. And I realized, can you actually hear me? Yeah. Yeah?
Yes, yes, we can hear you, darling.
Oh, okay, sorry, you were just looking around like it, and I just like, can she hear me? Okay. And so I got a spiritual calling. I had a wonderful job. I was teaching French to middle schoolers who chose to take my class. I was outside, so I could have the door open and hear the birds sing, and the administrators never came to bother me. The only tests I had to give were the ones that I made up myself, and I could structure it any way I wanted to. And yet there was this deep sense of, when thinking about coming back in the fall, because this was the spring of 2004, there was this deep sense of, I just can't do it. And it surprised me because my job was actually really good. I liked it. I loved the kids. I got to have the same kids 2 years in a row. And I didn't want to leave them. I didn't want to leave my 7th graders and have them have another teacher for 8th grade. But it was literally every time I thought about the beginning of the school year, my heart just dropped. And I was like, I can't do it. I can't go through all the paperwork. I can't go through the don't smile till Thanksgiving thing. I just can't do this. But I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So I just stopped working. and my son was still in high school at the time, and I was a single parent, and it was like a kind of a scary thing to do, but it was the only right thing I could do, so I did. And I went on this spiritual journey and journey into education that led me to originally ask, what if we were free to do education according to what we already know is best practice, right? And an example of that would be, we know from research that giving numerical grades is extremely bad for human learning, but we keep doing it. Why? And so those kinds of things that people take for granted. I designed a program that was much more productive for kids, and it's based on the existence of all knowledge, and this outcome to help people to create these models. I'm working with homes and helping them to come together more as communities, because I hear a lot of people saying how they feel so isolated homeschooling. And so by pooling resources, I think, and coming together, we can create kind of a school that's not school. That's what you have to take the school that I had. I think that answers your question.
Zahra, I'm having a really hard time hearing you right now. I'm not sure if it's my Ecuador connection, or are you, ladies on the panel, can you also hear Zahra, or is it just me?
No, I can't hear either.
No, it's breaking up.
I'm so sorry. Zahra, let me ask you a question though. First of all, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. I'm not sure how good this internet connection is that I have, although I can see and hear you all perfectly.
Okay, I could hear you in little pieces. Let me ask you a question though about your experience. I know that what I heard was your son was in high school and you came to the realization that you just couldn't do this anymore. You just couldn't work in schools. But I do know a little bit about your background, and you're working towards really trying to change education. You're trying to change education from the inside by empowering families. And I know you work with families directly. Can you tell us a little bit about what brought you to that decision and what that looks like when you work with families?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was the part that you didn't hear. Can you hear me now better? Is it better? Yeah, okay, good. So after I left the schools and I spent a couple of years reframing everything and wondering, you know, why did I do that? Why did I quit a perfectly good job, da, da, da. Then I realized, well, I want to open schools that are more progressive, and there was a vision to co-create a worldwide network of consciousness-based learning environments. And I thought, right, okay, well, I'll open a school then. That's what I'm supposed to do, and I did. And then I realized that that was never going to really create a worldwide network, partly because half the people that wanted to access it couldn't, because it was a private school. And I made it a private school instead of a charter school, because if you do a charter school in America, you have to still follow all the state testing requirements. So it makes child-directed learning quite challenging if by April 6th, say, they all have to know the exact same thing, that it doesn't quite match together. Myself, how can we overcome this issue of access for all people that want something progressive for their kids? And I decided that the way to do that was to empower parents to create their own programs that are progressive, move way beyond doing school at home. I'm in the call it at home, where it's just doing regular traditional school that's externally, an external curriculum, and through it, the difference. And so this is about coming together and using contributionism, so all the different resources all the families have can be pulled together to create a learning environment, whatever that looks like for that community, and use best practices. And I only work with groups of parents that want to do that. If they want to buy
Yeah, Zahra, I'm sorry to interrupt. Zahra, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. We can't hear you at this point. You're again. Darn it. Actually, I'm going to ask you if you can just rejoin the group again. If you can.
Okay, let me try.
You can come, because I'm so interested in hearing what you have to say. I think you add a really valuable aspect to this conversation. So she's left the room and she's coming back. But in the meantime, let's jump back over to Julie, and I want to ask you, Julie, what does it mean to be a connected parent?
Oh, it all starts with connecting with ourselves. That's kind of the key. That our own self-awareness and realizing when we're triggered, and right in that mirror of our kids or our husband is all the parts of ourselves that are undeveloped and defensive and not at peace with ourselves comes out, and it takes practice, it takes habit to start to see who we are in connection with other people. And as the years have gone on, and I love this deep dive, into who I am, and understanding where my belief systems have held me back, and seeing myself in the mirror of others. But it's really challenging when my kids or my husband, who I love most in the world, I see what I don't like in myself, in them, right in my home, where I want harmony and love and peace, and I want it to radiate out in the world and world peace, but I can't find it in my own heart. And so the work always comes back to connecting with my own soul, my own heart's call, so that I can be connected. It's ironic that we need to, and I need a lot of alone time and space and hours sometimes to reconnect with myself so that I can be truly connected to them. So it looks as if there's this solo journey for each of us as parents, and yet it is the journey to find that universal place where we all, speak the same language, where we all want our that love and that deep connection. But as humans, in being in our separate little earth suits, we are sort of primed to believe we're separate and alone. And so it's an ongoing challenge, it's an ongoing privilege. I love the word, Josha, you used of reverence, that the reverence we felt for our kids as little ones, and then the thought of handing them over to a system that can't possibly love them the way we do, just kind of brought me home to, wow, I think that this all starts, this connectedness, this sense of harmony, it starts within our own hearts, and it ripples out to our kids, and it's not necessarily a part of the system right now. So staying connected within our own family, to our own dreams, to our own heart's call, even if it's different, which of course we have 4 personalities in our family, 4 very different people, and learning and trusting and honoring each other's very different desires and different personalities is part of the pathway. It's part of how we learn that all of it is us. All of it is a mirror of us, kind of, bumping into ourselves. And if we don't accept what's outside us, there's something inside us that we need to address and we need to love, and to stop trying to push it away or hide it, but to bring it out into the family, to be honest with our kids when we're feeling attacked or vulnerable or whatever it is, and to communicate that on a daily basis, even when some people are going to resist it, and it could be me that day. And then you have to separate and, do our own private parenting time out, not the kids, us, and reconnect with ourselves, and then try it again out into the family. It's just, I think it's this ongoing flow that we're just trying to be present with ourselves first, and then fully present with the people we love, and then the community we love, and the world we want to love.
Powerful. That was so powerful. And you said something that just like stung me right to the heart. And what you said was the thing that you find, annoying or triggers you within your family are the things that you don't like about yourselves. And isn't it true that when we are triggered, it's because of the reflection that we see that reminds us of not only how human we are, but how faulted, we all are. I mean, my God, that was powerful. Thank you for saying that, Julie. And then I actually want to jump back over to Zahra, and I'm really hoping that your connection's better. Do you want to try and answer the question, what connectedness means to you?
Well, I don't know. Can you hear me?
You sound clear.
Okay.
Please.
All right, good. I've also got the other mic on. So, what does connectedness mean? Tonga, and the kids would do a Maori exercise called a pipiha. And a pipiha is when you speak in Maori language, your connection to the earth. Yeah, you still can't hear me, huh?
You have no idea how badly I want to hear this story. Oh, Zahra.
I don't know what to do. I mean, it's the internet connection. It's obviously not good. I mean, half the time you guys are breaking up for me too. I'm finding New Zealand is not very good for good internet.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to have you jump back in a little bit, and I'm going to just hope and pray that the internet sounds a little bit better. But in the meantime, I'm going to jump on over to Josha and ask you the same question. Josha, what does connectedness mean to you and your family?
I don't know. I want to hear that pee-pee ha story.
I know. Me too.
Oh. Okay. What's the question again, lady? What is it? What is connectedness? Is that what you said? Yeah, I mean, everything. Absolutely, absolutely everything. And again, like Julie, you always love hearing what you have to say, and it's so relevant, and it's so, yes. So, and I love how you said separate earth suit. That's so great. I love it because that's so true. Okay, so connectedness in parenting. I mean, it's very interesting because right now I'm working in a very hard environment with lots of mainstream-ish kind of parenting ideas, lots of kids. There's DCF custody, which is Department of Children and Families, and then also I have this more peaceful parenting kind of like my people that I hang with and chat with and talk to. And so I've got these really polar ends that I'm dealing with. And connection is really, it goes across the board in everybody in every way. And I can talk with, a family that's dealing with addiction and getting their kids taken away from them, or I could talk to, a more open unschooling, people, and they're struggling with just their triggers, and oh darn it, I yelled at my kid, or I wasn't fully present for them. But both ends, it's really all about connection, and you cannot, you just can't connect unless, like Julie said, you take the time to connect with yourself, right? So that's the work, and that's the work that I'm passionate about for myself, and that I'm passionate about when I work with parents. And for me, I love it when I am triggered and I do have my mirror, my person, my kid in front of me, and I really, in the moment, that is the time when I connect. And I really pause and I just breathe into my discomfort, and I try and be as present as possible with what's going on in the moment. Wow. And breathe, and then I'm at a place now, my kids are older, they're teenagers, and I can really share out my discomforts in the moment, and to me that's really taken it deeper, and we're in process together, and I can own my reactions and share them with them. And so it's just this really fluid back and forth, where I felt when they were younger I had to dismiss myself. So because you're not going to be in that conversation with a little person. It's more, okay, let me get through this moment, let me check myself and my reactivity, and I would go process it separately. But now it feels as they're older and we can be in conversation about it, we have more conversations, and I get to acknowledge my own triggers, and it's a great learning for them how to be conscious people and give voice to their reactivity in the moment too. So connectedness, yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Josha. My question to you is, how does a person get to the point where they can identify what their triggers are and have the self-awareness to know that they're triggered?
I think anytime you're off your center, you can say that you're triggered, right? So oh wow, that doesn't feel good, and so I get to pause and breathe, and that's not my best self. It takes some practice in being self-reflective and self-aware, because if, like Eckhart Tolle, he does the pain body, if you're in the you're consumed by the pain body, you can't see, there's no hope, and maybe there's hope to reflect afterwards. And then the journey is that you get closer and closer and closer to seeing the pain body before it happens. And that just comes with slowing yourself down and practicing self-awareness, breathing, meditation, all those self-aware kinds of tools.
Do you think, Josha, that parenting styles have shifted from when we were kids? Because, go ahead.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I don't know if you guys or any of the watchers, listeners, whatever, have read any of A.S. Neil Summerhill, which is just a beautiful, great book. It's way back in the 60s, and my mom read that way back then, and he talks about it's this kind of stuff, but she didn't have, I think, a sense of awakening about herself. She was completely a fearful person, and so she couldn't hold that. There were plenty of people, back in the 60s and 70s, I think, who were doing this kind of thing, but it just keeps growing and growing and growing, and there's more and more people who are getting on board the bus now. One of my favorite parenting little snippet that I've been using with some of the people I work with, I was so, 1974, this beautiful, great stuff. I'm like, wow, this is great. And it's so, I can even, in unschooling peaceful parenting circles, I'm like, dudes, you guys need to read this book because it's not happening, and, we're never done. So we're all in process.
So true. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to try again to jump on over to Zahra. And Zahra, if you can just turn your video off, we know what your beautiful face looks like, but I think the best way to hear your voice is to do it without the video aspect. I really want to hear that story. So my question to you was if you can talk about connectedness.
Okay, so how's this? Is it better? A bit better so far? Yeah? Okay, good. So, yeah.
Zahra, I'm afraid I can't hear you. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, and Josha just
Know what
typed
to
in,
do.
didn't hear you either. Goodness. Oh, this breaks my heart. I wanted to hear your perspective. You bring such a fresh perspective to this conversation too, but I'm going to have to reschedule this topic and have you back another time. We just can't hear you, I'm afraid.
Okay,
So,
sorry about that.
no, stay in the conversation. Stay in, and if you have something that you want to add, either try and say it or type it in, and we'll share it with the audience. But in the meantime,
Okay.
I want to jump back over to Julie, and I want to talk about. I mean, we've spoken about triggers. We've spoken about our own emotional health. We've spoken about being tapped into our intuition as parents, and you've really shared some great examples of that. But we haven't yet made the connection from being connected and supporting learning. And as the three women that are actively unschooling, we are the three women that are actively unschooling on this panel, and so maybe we could bring it back around and talk about supporting learning through connectivity.
Well, here's an example. Can you hear me? Am I unmuted? Okay. A couple of years ago, I think when my 14-year-old was 10 or so, we're driving to his co-op, I think. And it's quiet in the car, and suddenly he says to me, Mom, if I was in spirit before I was born, and I'm going there when I die, why don't I remember? And I thought, wow, I don't know that anyone has the answer to that, I said to him, but that is a great question. And my feeling is that if we knew that we were these powerful spirits, if we knew that no harm could come to us, that our consciousness lives on and on, if we knew that this was a game, it would not be the same challenge and the same adventure that it is when we basically are blindfolded and playing, hide and go seek. You need places to hide. And so I think that's why I'm saying to my son that we have this amnesia for our bigger self, and we come here to kind of excavate it and understand it. And so I look in the rearview mirror to see, is he buying this explanation? And he's quiet for a minute, and then he says, yeah, it's kind of like my video games. The first time through is really hard. I don't know where any of the prizes are. I don't know where I'm going to get my health. I don't know where the monsters are going to jump out. I have to do the same things over and over. He said the second time through is easier. I remember some of the the good places, the tough places. I get through more quickly. The third time through is a snap. I'm really fast at it. I'm really good at it. And I kind of think I know where he's going, but I ask him, so which time is the best? And he said, without a hitch, oh, the first. Because it's the hardest, but it's the most fun. And I was so blown away by his metaphor, especially because video games have been sort of a point of contention, a point of disconnection between myself and my sons, because there's sort of a, there's a concern around that. There's a raging debate about whether they create violence, whether they, and over the years I've come to see how much they've learned playing video games, just about socializing with each other, about teamwork, about, oh my gosh, everything. They both learned to read because of video games. So the fact that he was pulling in this higher spiritual understanding, I mean, I don't think he'd use those words, but I would have, and he was putting it in the context of his everyday life, which at the time was the love of video games. And he saw this connection, and he helped me see this connection of what it means to challenge ourselves, to be on this human journey. And although I'm doing the challenging in a different way with my business, with my life, we are still connected to that understanding that whatever we choose, even sometimes it's not a great choice, but it still teaches us. So everything is, a teaching moment. Everything is valuable. Whatever the ugliness that can come up, it can be turned into something beautiful and something valuable that not only connects us to each other, but connects us to a greater sense of universal learning and an expansiveness and growth, even in a video game, which many people malign and feel that it's lazy idleness, and I can see that it isn't. And just in that instant, I was so touched by his connective understanding. The way his brain synapses quickly put what I said together with what he has seen and known at 10 or whatever he was, and just, it's kind of settled my heart and soothed my sense that, oh, video games, really? Is that what you want to do all day? And then he showed me in a matter of a moment that, yes, he was learning, he was growing, he was synthesizing in ways that I couldn't have imagined.
What an amazing story, Julie. I think your son is a philosopher. and it shows that the connectedness goes like both ways. It's not just you connecting to your kid connecting to you. It's like this circle that just continues and continues and continues, and it's the awareness that we have to bring to it, to bring to the presence, as Josha was talking about, being present, that helps us remain connected. What a beautiful story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Josha, you're up, honey. I want to hear your thoughts about connectedness and learning.
Connectedness and learning. Connectedness and learning. I really like, okay, so connected, me, the parent, connecting with my kid and supporting them in their learning. So I guess, I mean, kind of obvious, taking the time to connect with my kid, to feel into where he's at, to either one. I have two boys, so to feel into where they're at and what they want to experience. And I'm kind of trying to feel this separate ish from just unschooling and just really feel. And I'm a feeling person, so for me, my path is to really feel with my people and feel what their heart is saying and what they want or need to be learning in the moment. And I think for us, it's gone from very practical, crafty-oriented things to, just basic math and writing and just like the 3 R's. And so it's just a really deep listening and conversation. And I think it looks different with the teens, than with the younger ones. And really being a connected parent and just being present and willing to learn with your kid as they're learning. And it's it's a co-creative process, just supporting them. And I think I have a hard time with this learning because I really feel like we're just learning all the time. So I guess for me, I might change it just to support them in living. I don't want to be too airy-fairy about it, but it really is just living and learning is just part of that. So the more I'm connected with them, I can feel with them and sense what they need and ask them. And it's kind of, a walking next to. And I've been here longer, so I have access to more resources, and I think my path is helping them get the resources that they need for learning. I think, yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand. The term learning itself, it is a lifelong process, and even though this particular topic is not about unschooling, we're talking about self-directed learning, and self-directed learning happens at any age. We're lifelong learners, and most of us, I'm sure, that are watching this show that have an interest in alternative education are of the belief that learning happens throughout your life anyway. And so I think the more intentional we are about it, it somehow defines that, well, not defines, but fills that part of our lives that, we're talking about alternative education here. So this is an alternative education. We're going to call it learning.
Yeah.
So, but you're right, it's not different than life. And yes, as an unschooling parent, we support our children, but we're also, like you said, walking side by side with them. So I want to ask you something, and I didn't intend to go to this place, but we've got, Zahra, I wish I could hear you, but we've got parents of teens and adults here, and a lot of people talk about, a lot of people are fearful of the teen years, and especially for homeschooling, home educating families, what are you going to do? Your kids can rebel, I don't have that experience, and I don't know if the people on this panel have that experience. I suspect we do not, and I suspect the reason that we do not is because we're connected. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I think it is the connection, and I don't really think that it's the schooling piece, because it's really your commitment to your own level of connection with yourself and with your kids. I think that the lack of that is what's going to lead to, teenage conflict and, angsty. The teenage year, you're trying to figure out who you are, and what a difference to have somebody there with you and like, yeah, I get it. What do you want? Versus you can't, or you need to do what I want you to do. I think this focus on connection, if you're connected to this person in your life, you want to help them. That's just, you can't not want to do that. And I feel really, knock on wood, just grateful for my teenagers and how the people that they are and what they're turning out to be. I feel really great, really happy. I do hear, because my day life is more in the mainstream and the school, like I do deal with some school stuff, and I'm always kind of, oh, but wait, I'm the voice in the room saying, but they have the potential. The reason that they're so hard to be with is because there's so many people pushing against them and trying to control them, and it's a very tiny voice, it's a little whisper, but I feel very committed to maintaining that and being in the mix with more mainstream.
Yeah. I could see how there's tremendous benefits to your own personal growth as a counselor and a supporter.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
So, Julie, I want to jump over to you and ask you, I mean, we went down this road to talk about parenting teens. You want to talk a little bit about your experience parenting a teen?
I found the same thing as Josha. It's just delightful to me to be communicating on a much more mature level. My 14-year-old, though, still wants to get in bed at night with my husband and I just to talk right before he goes to sleep, and I find that so amazing and reassuring that at 14 he's very independent during the day. Sometimes we barely see him. He's off doing his own thing. He has just taken the reins in a way that I never imagined a 14-year-old would. And yet he still seeks to connect with us when he's no longer busy and the thoughts are coming up in his mind and the feelings are coming up in his heart, and he wants to talk things over with us. And the way he approaches his life is, I mean, just different from anything I know. And I'll often say that to him or my husband, like, we were raised in a very traditional environment where we felt pretty repressed, and as Josha was saying, there was a lot to buck up against, whereas my kids don't really have that. There's a quote that goes something like, discipline isn't necessary when obedience isn't the objective, or something to that effect. And without that sense of, I know what's right for you, and you need to listen to my worldview and what I think you should do, without that, my kids have the time, they have the freedom, they have the excitement of moving into an adult world, wanting to ingratiate themselves into that world, and also realizing that, we may be adults, but we still are growing, we're still making mistakes, we still have to apologize and, clean up the mess and show them, like Josha was saying, when we're triggered, to show them how do we come out of that. Like, it upsets my kids when my husband and I argue. Now, they'll call it fighting, but I say, well, it's we disagree, and we need to have this conversation, even though it's uncomfortable for you, it's uncomfortable for us. This is what happens when four humans are living together and we're trying to stay connected, but our own defenses are up, something's uncomfortable, we don't know what it is. We need to have those conversations, and hopefully they're taking that in, so that when they disagree, and we always say, well, when you disagree, we don't tell you to stop. We ask you, what's happening, how can we kind of flesh this out? And so they're seeing it modeled, such an important part of life that really isn't modeled in school. They get to see in their everyday world. They have a sense of enthusiasm about growing up and learning to drive, and it's less of a, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here, get me a car, and it's more like, wow, the world is at my feet, and they want to get there, but they're not in too much of a terrible hurry to grow up. I remember a good friend of mine who's an unschooler had this huge book. It was this massive, all about, and it was so dry and scholarly that I couldn't get through it. But essentially the theme was that teenage rebellion just sort of dovetailed with traditional schooling when school became, this coercive thing, that suddenly there was a rebellion that had never been, that our kids are kept young longer than they're comfortable. So by the time they're 14, they need and deserve more choices, more responsibility than they're given in regular school. So at home, when they have that, there's no need for them to fight for more, because they're given what they're capable of. And if they ask for more, like my 10-year-old is actually, he asks for more freedom in a sense than my 14-year-old. They're just very different personalities, and so we've had to more sooner with him allow things that we may have been not comfortable with our older one, but the younger one is ready and asking. So it's a process of figuring out each personality and thinking, okay, if you're saying you're ready, like he wanted a whittling knife when he was really young, and we were horrified, but we ended up, sort of looking into it with him, and we got him one, and no fingers were lost, no major cuts. There were some, but it was such a beautiful thing for him to be given this responsibility of this knife and to take this leap of maturity in his mind. So it's different for each kid. He's not a teen yet, and yet he's really acting like that he's ready for things that our older one was not.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. You're right, they're all so individual. I wanted to ask you, Julie, at what point were you open and honest and vulnerable and sharing your journey with them as part of a way of making the connection? The reason why I ask that is, when I was growing up, I wasn't connected with my family. I just wasn't. It just wasn't traditionally how we were parented. There was none of that honesty, none of that feeling and thinking and going through. And that, to me, really left me with the sense growing up of being disconnected. And that was a great teacher for me. That taught me how I didn't want to relate to my child. And I'm just wondering, because you've been so vocal and open and honest about your journey and your emotional roller coaster, of growing up and dealing with your own demons, how much of that were you open and vulnerable to your children?
I've shared it pretty early on. My memoir came out when my youngest son, was 5. So I remember the first time I was on TV, and the kids came into the living room, and our neighbor who was 10 was there. She was more excited than my own kids. They were like, oh yeah, there's Mom, and off they went. I think I've been sharing whatever was appropriate in the moment. For instance, my son once was crying in his bed, and he said, when will I fit in, or something to that. And I was so surprised, because I didn't know he even had those feelings. He seemed so adjusted. He had a lot of friends. We had a neighborhood of friends who went to school, but then he had many kids who weren't in school. And so I sat with him, and we talked about that, and I said, wow, I can just so remember those feelings, and they stayed with me into my 20s, and they still pop up sometimes. It's just one of those parts of who we are as a human, to like in our separate earth suits, to believe that we are not connected on a universal level, that at times when we've disavowed our own soul, our own path, it's easy to feel like we're not a part, we're not fitting in. And so times like that, when it was appropriate and it came up for them, I would share just as much as they would very quickly tell me when it was enough. Because I grew up like you in a non-communicative family, a loving family, but we didn't talk about difficult things. We only shared the good stuff. So that was a great springboard for me to learn how to communicate. And now, you can't shut me up. So with my kids, they have to be like, enough, Mom. So I think, if anything, there have been times I've overshared, and I can see their eyes start to glaze over, and they'll think, yeah, Mom, I just asked you how to spell, helicopter. I didn't ask for a teaching moment. And then I know. So they're really open about how much they want to hear and what they're ready to hear. So I kind of base it on them. I don't sit them down and go, listen, I want to tell you what it was like when I grew up. And I've told them probably more than my husband has told them about his background and why sometimes it's hard for him to really hear them because he wasn't listened to, he wasn't respected, and when he gets frustrated and feels out of control, he wants to kind of, come down on whatever's happening, and it doesn't work, and he knows it doesn't, but it's just, we all have our habits. So at those times we talk about Dad's background, and then Bill will chime in, yes, my dad pulled out the belt if we weren't listening. So yeah, they get a mix from both of us. As much as I'm comfortable sharing, it's really them that draws the line when they need to. Like, that's enough. Thank you so much.
Yeah, they have a good way of communicating what their limits are. That's great. Zahra has sent me a note saying that she's adjusted her video, her mic settings. So we're going to try and hear from Zahra again. I know that she has so much to add to this conversation. So let's jump on over to Zahra and let's cross our fingers that this is going to work. Zahra?
It keeps muting me.
Hello? You hear me now? Okay, well, we'll try then.
Yeah, I hear you.
But sometimes Google Hangouts just look up and it's easy for no reason. I haven't done anything. It's really weird. So what's the question? Hello? Can you hear me?
Zahra? Yeah, it doesn't sound like it's getting any better.
Yeah.
Normally, we're on the Conscious Consumer Network, and the software that we use is much better than the Google Hangouts. We're using Google Hangouts tonight because they're doing some of the streaming maintenance. I would love to have this panel back because you guys all have so much to say. But Zahra, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. And so we're going to move on right now. But I promise, I have you booked for another panel because I love your story and I love your passion and I love the things that you have to say. So I'm so sorry that we don't get to hear that tonight on this panel. But let's jump on over to Josha. And Josha, we were talking with Julie about teens and vulnerability. Do you have any thoughts about sharing vulnerability?
Yes, do it. You must do it. Damn it. You better be vulnerable. Yeah, you absolutely must do it, and the payoff is so awesome. And I am speaking from experience right now and enjoying just a really, really great connection with my teenager. My older, I have a 13 and a 17, and right now the time is just the connection with the 17-year-old and the journey that he has been on and continues to be on, and he he is schooling me, in some very amazing ways. And of course, these kids are very wise and very advanced. And I crawled through the trenches of emotional processing and just baggage, right? And he doesn't have to do that. And so his access to, I think higher truths and ability to be present and connected just blows me away. And it's so great. And so, and I think a big part of that journey was my willingness to be open and vulnerable, and to walk side by side with him through some, pretty intense experiences, for him, and to be present and not try and fix it. Like, oh, these intense things happening, and let me fix it, and let me save you. I really tried to be present with that in earlier times of my parenting journey, and I know that I didn't. I did fall prey to the fix it thing, whatever. I did try to fix many discomforts, but yeah. Anyway, I feel, yeah. So,
so you said you walk side by side with your son. That's a whole new parenting paradigm than what I grew up with. I didn't do. It was a hierarchical, where you sit, where you stand. So you want to talk about what that looks like in your family?
It's a lot of conversation and communication, and being willing to sit in silence, and just sit down and sit down next to them. I think like with some of the work with parents that I do, I get a lot of visuals to support the process. And I think with the younger kids, I always get this visual of kind of kneeling down and, I see you, I hear you, I feel you. And it feels to me like with the teenager, and I keep bringing up this side-by-side kind of feeling, and it really feels like that to me. Like, okay, let me sit down next to you and let me just be with you in this. It's your deal, it's your thing that you're going through, and I'm just going to sit next to you and be with you. So that's felt a little different to me with when it was, when they were younger, it was more of this across heart connecting, and now it feels like this side to side connecting. I don't know if that answered your question. I forgot, but. Yeah.
No, it totally did. Thanks, Josha. Zahra actually typed in the text box. She's so, she wants to contribute to this conversation, and she wrote, teenagers vary greatly from culture to culture. In America, if we can change our view of what that means, then the teens will change too. But we present a picture of out-of-control young people who party like crazy and are irresponsible. It's everywhere in media and pop culture. So they grow to match. And so I want to ask the panel, based on Zahra's comment, how you feel media influences our connectedness, our parenting, and of course the way that we learn. And so, Josha, I'm sorry.
Just because I think that is true, and I also think that it's the connection that I used to be kind of protective, like, ooh, don't let my kids be exposed to that. But I know from my parenting and my personal transformation and my growth, it doesn't matter what I expose them to, they have their center, and so I feel very confident that they can move through some, I can't even imagine them, partying if they were to go off to college and spending their freshman year, in a frat house. They look at that kind of thing and they're like, what are those people doing? And I do think that kind of crazy behavior does exist, but I think it stems from disconnection and, dysfunctional parenting and disconnection being passed down and, to the kids. So I think it's an awakening on all different levels. So I absolutely see it in the media, but I, I don't think that that's to blame because it's there, but it's not going to take hold unless there's something happening in the family structure where it can take hold. So that's my therapist kind of view.
So you're saying that the media contributes to the disconnection of the family.
Yeah, I think it can, but the work, I believe, happens in the family. I mean, that's my passion. That's where my view of transformation is. It's really in the mental and emotional health of the family system. So if there's not something funky going on in there, then those dysfunctional behaviors won't take hold.
Yeah, well said, well said. And Julie, do you want to chime in on this?
Yeah, is your question whether media is making it, is encouraging teenage rebellion?
Well, Zahra's point was there's a lot of depiction of teens in the media where they're out of control, and then does that then just affirm that disconnected parenting is the status quo, and how does that affect how do the conversations look inside of a connected family when that just isn't the truth?
Right, and whether or not that image and those images over and over, whether they affect our kids to want to emulate that. I would imagine, I think what Josha is saying, I would say is true as well, that when we feel at home within our own relationships, and when we have a center and a home within ourselves and a connection to our soul's call and a trust that our parents have given to us, a faith that we're allowed to make choices, I think it would be unusual to suddenly lash out into a party world or a rebelliousness. From everything I've learned or understood when I went to college, and I was very straight-laced. I didn't want to party. I loved socializing. I loved dancing, but I didn't drink. I didn't drug. But that was a control issue. I needed to be in control because I didn't want to do anything humiliating. I already was regularly humiliated for the way I looked. So my kids don't have a sense that they need to numb themselves, that they need to anesthetize themselves through drinking or partying. And when we talk about it, because they hear from their neighbor friends, that their 12-year-old smoking or their this and that is going on, and they ask me, why, like if they see a depiction of someone drunk, and they say, why on earth would you drink so much that you couldn't walk? And so it gives us an opportunity to talk about that. Well, what does it mean when you drink so much that you can't? I said I used to have conversations in college that the following day my friend wouldn't remember them because they drank so much or smoked so much. And I felt disconnected because I thought, wow, they don't value our friendship enough to be present. So if I had an inkling of that at that time, and I was very insecure and feeling quite disconnected from the society, they have an even stronger, there's an even stronger hope in my mind, in a way, it's not a shield, it's more like a strength to question what is media showing me that makes no sense, that is a disconnected bunch that may look like partying and fun, but my kids definitely question it. They don't quite understand it. So I don't think it looks appealing to them, but it's possible that it's, drilling in, just like their media images of women or airbrushed, smiles on everything. That I kind of go back and forth about their exposure to TV, but for instance movies that they know would scare them or are inappropriate, they don't want to go see. I don't have to say, no, you can't. But there have been times where they said, oh, can we see such and such? And then I explained to them, it's got these adult themes and it's got this and that. And they're like, oh, no. So they don't want to jump way ahead because no one's stopping them. It opens up into a conversation. So a friend of mine who is very Waldorf oriented, and her daughter's 8, she's never seen TV. Well, she's seen it at friend's house, but my friend really freaks out whenever she sees TV and the little girl, when she sees TV, absolutely is paralyzed by it and completely focused on it because it's the forbidden fruit. So whereas my kids, and I grew up without restrictions about TV, and I didn't really abuse it. There was no need for me to just sit and zone out in front of the TV. I had better things to do. So we haven't had restrictions per se, but it's certainly a different world, and there have been times when I've wondered, should I say something? But then, when, like Josh is saying, when I sit side by side and we watch some of those images, and then we have a chance to talk about it, that's a good thing. I can't hide them from the world they're growing up in, so I kind of always come back around to, I'm not going to try, I'm just going to keep the lines open so that they can always talk to us about whatever it is, sex, drugs, rock and roll. We're there they can bounce it off of us.
We have some rock and roll discussions here, actually. Zahra had mentioned in the chat box that she feels that media's role is to really continue a cycle of fear, and I think that really does have an effect on the family unit. Most of the family units in mainstream America, where we're from, they live conventional lives, and their children go to school, and the family goes out of the home to work, and so, okay, that cycle, that lifestyle, it almost matches, right? A cycle of fear, a cycle of functioning in society, and you're fearful that you'll lose, you'll lose your job, you'll lose your status, you'll lose your friends, your whatever it is. There's fear surrounding everything. Do you experience, Julie, any of those external fears as part of your family's experience?
It's interesting. Sometimes it comes up. We don't watch the news just because it's been something I've avoided for years, because what Zahra is saying, the spin in media tends to go toward fear because fear sells, and we are a culture where the fears are loud, and I don't think they're bigger than our strengths and our compassion, but they're loud and they need attention because there's been a lot of emotional repression. So it's out there. It's in the news. So we don't have it on TV. We don't. The kids will hear from the neighbors, say, about a shooting where a child has been killed, and the kids haven't seen the sensationalized, to the dramatic music and all of that. So they are open to the conversation, and they don't seem to get fearful about it. But I know my son has had, at night, he says he'll sometimes pull the covers up over his head. He doesn't know what he's afraid of, but the fear comes up. I recently went on a solo retreat by myself and in this lovely house, and I usually go in the summer when all the windows are open and the neighbors are pretty close by, so I haven't felt nervous being alone. This last time, all the windows closed in the winter, suddenly I found myself up in the bedroom confronting my fear of someone coming into the house, someone, all from, the media's attention to the few times where someone is hurt, as opposed to the many, many times that we're all safe in the world. So I grew up with the news. I grew up hearing about it daily in school, in my home. My kids are exposed to it, but in a different way, less dramatized way. And so hopefully that's more real to them. It's a part of life, but it's a smaller part than media would have us think.
Yeah, and I think your awareness, your consciousness about everything, about where you came from and how you're processing everything now is pretty amazing. You know, you're very conscious about that. Um, yeah, and I think we can make a choice too, not to choose the fear.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears a little bit, and I want to jump over to Josha. I want to talk about fear, but not in the way that we were talking about it. I want to talk about fear that comes up as a parent and how that stops us in our tracks from either opening up or, you know, how that affects our parenting. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Can you say a little bit more about the fear part? Like what kind of fear? What do you like? Just fear of?
Well, I'm not a counselor by any means, but
Yeah.
I talk to families all the time that somehow think that we're brave for taking on the lifestyle that we've taken on.
I
And
agree. Yes, ma'am.
but there's no bravery or courage involved. It's just a matter of not being fearful. And I think a lot of people stop in their tracks because of fear, and it's just something that I don't experience as I move through my life. But you as a counselor, I'm sure that plays a part in in the family unit, and in people's personal lives. And I'm sure you know, I mean, you work for the system as well, so you're counseling people that want to make sure that they're not part of, you know, child protective services, and I mean there is a culture of fear, but how does that play into the family?
Wow. It. I mean, fear into the. I mean, I think that maybe I could wind a thread with that topic, like fear. Like I look at your life and I feel, for me, that can trigger, I guess, some fear, but I don't, because you're so, you know, you like to travel and you like to be out there in different situations like that. That's not really I've done it. I grew up overseas. I spent my childhood in different countries. And I think right now, big travel and moving in the world does trigger some fear in me. And I could connect that back to Julie's, you know, the previous conversation about news and media and what's happening in the world. I can be more curious about the world from my home, my safe little haven. And so, like, we look at the world events with more curiosity and interest because we're not like in it and moving through these different places. And fear, I guess, with regards to parenting, it's you know, I can connect it back to the emotional fear and those places that we're unwilling to go and we're unwilling to look at. That keep us smaller. And I know for myself, the more that I'm willing to engage and challenge my fears, the more present that I can be with my kids and that they can challenge their own fear, I guess. I'm trying to think of what their fears are right now, but that's not really up for us right now. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to go work in a more mainstream environment, was to challenge myself and my own fears around, you know, sharing myself in the world, fears of being rejected for my new ideas, or just who I am. Does that touch on what you were pointing at, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's a limiting factor. Your fears will limit you in your experience in this you know, experience, you know, no matter what. So whatever your fear is, if you can get to a place where you can name it and take it and move with it, that's where we'll expand and we'll grow. And the more that I grow as a person, I know that I can get out of my kids' way and not inhibit them. Sometimes I don't really see myself as ooh, I'm making them grow, as it is I'm just getting out of their way, like, get out of here, lady. Just support me as I move through this life.
Yeah, and okay, so maybe I took a conversation about fear that didn't really, it wasn't really relevant to us in this topic, but it took us to a place where I want to ask you, what is the role of not just the parent, but as an adult? Because you said earlier, as an adult, you have more years and more experience, and you're not better, but you just have more experiences. What is the responsibility coming into a relationship with your children? Who, who do you need to be as being the best parent that you can be? I mean, there's no license to be a parent to have a child, but to be a connected parent, tell me, who do you need to be?
I need to be as connected to myself as I possibly can, and just be aware of me. If I can be 100, I mean, it's really selfish. If I can be 100% selfish about my path and my journey, then that's when my best parenting self shows up. Yeah.
Yeah, and Julie, do you have something to add to that?
You're still muted.
Now, can you hear me? Oh, I can't hear you. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you. Sorry, I was muted.
No, that's okay. So what were we talking about? The role of, what is our role essentially as parents? And it is very different. I like what you said, Lainey, about that other people think there's some bravery involved here. And actually I believe there is, but it's more a result of self-awareness than courage. Instead of pushing through fear, we're living in this sense of awareness and love for ourselves first, and then we're able to be present for our kids, be as responsible, able to respond to our own inner dynamics, so that we can show our kids how that's done, what that looks like. It looks to me nothing like what I thought adults would look. I thought by the time you were 30, you had it together, you had a job, and I turned 30 and was like, oh my, I'm still a child. I'm still figuring things out. But my kids, conversely, know that about parents. They realize that we don't know half the time what to do either, but we're there. We're on the front lines with them. We want to figure it out with them. We want, like Wayne Dyer says, guide, then step aside. And that's kind of what we're doing with our own. We see the fear, we name it, we kind of process it, we try and love it and honor it and move on. So the step aside is like a metaphor. We're stepping aside from our own fear, from the limits that, for instance, that I have friends who were very initially upset when we decided to homeschool. At the time, we didn't even know the word unschool, but because of attachment parenting and the way we naturally, our family kind of came together, unschooling made sense as we went along. But my friends were very uncomfortable and now looking back, really intimidated by anyone, I think, stepping outside the system and maybe saying with judgment that our way is a better way. And of course, and I do have to rein that in because I do feel that way at times, and I don't want to divide. I don't want a wall between my friends whose kids are in school and me whose kids are not. It just, they sense that I feel I've found a better way, and so of course they feel their own fear come up. Well, why did she leave the pack? And she's okay, but I don't want to leave the pack. I like the quote, I don't know if it's Mark Twain. Someone said, when you find yourself on the side of the majority, it's time to stop and pause. And I like that idea because very often the majority has simply become the wave of status quo, and when anybody steps away from that, it's a little jarring for the people who are staying with the status quo, because then they are forced or asked to question their own decisions. And if they question and they say, no, a public school has been great for my kids, well, that's good. They've fortified their own choices. They see other alternatives, and then their choice is not just because the society says this is what we're all doing. It's because in their heart and in their family, it's the right choice. And for us, same thing. I couldn't see myself in that system. It just felt very repressed, and but I didn't want that to divide my friends and I, but it ended up happening, and I don't know whether their fears are still in the way or they sensed my judgment and never forgave me for it. We've since talked about it, but it still didn't really heal that rift. So I have to keep, following my path. I think anytime, though, we're trying to change any, unrest in the world that we're hoping to affect in a positive way, we're going to get some resistance from that fear that's saying, let's not change anything, because that is just frightening. And change brings discomfort, and I don't want to be in discomfort. There's already enough going on. So it is a risk, and we're stretching outside our comfort zone, and in doing that, we're asking others to do it in a way that they may not be ready for, they may never want to do, and that should be okay too.
Julie, you said something in the beginning of this conversation about desiring to have a peaceful family and a peaceful home, and when you're feeling the craziness from inside, you couldn't even create the peace in your own house when you wanted to have a peaceful world. And I think that's a reflection of, how we do create a peaceful world. We do it by creating peace in the home first, and we do that by staying connected and as Josha said, walking side by side instead of ahead or behind. You walk with your family. You're there walking the path side by side, and I think that's really kind of the most important epiphany I got from this conversation, and it's a wonderful reminder.
I love also what Josha was talking about, the fix-it issue, because I definitely fell into that category of thinking I knew, what was best, and I realized over time what a disservice that is to our kids, to basically say to them, you can't do this for yourself, so therefore I will do it for you. Even if they're struggling, even if they're crying or having a tantrum, still being present with my own discomfort with that and wanting to fix it and breathing into it and allowing them their expression or their emotion, that still is something really powerful. When I am able to do that more often than not, I'm so rewarded by this sense that, wow, it's not all up to me. Yay! I can trust their lives to unfold. I can trust the universe as it unfolds. I'm a recovering control freak, and not having to fix it for my kids is a blessing. I still have to rein myself in sometimes, but wow, is that an important aspect. I'm glad Josha brought that up.
Yeah, me too. That actually has been the most important lesson that I've learned, and my son is such a good teacher because I have the archetype of the caretaker. And I take care of everything. Oh, boy. And he tells me over and over, Mom, I'm 15. You don't have to do that for me. I just realized you're right. So, Josha, is there anything that you'd like to add to this conversation?
Hi. On the fix it, because I'm a professional fixer. My input. Oh, let me fix that for you. I can do it. It's, you know what? I have to embrace that. That's a really good quality, and that's something that is good that I bring to this planet, is the ability to see glitches and feel glitches, but to let go and trust that other people can do their own work, and that I'm in service to help identify that for them, and it's not my job to fix it. So yeah, yeah.
I'm going to take a soundbite of Josha saying that it's not
It's
to
not my
fix it.
job.
Say
Right?
that over and over because that's still my challenge, and
Yeah.
I still, yeah.
Yeah, and
So,
that's a big one, and it's I mean, I think it's a lifelong learning for me, because I have you know, and it's, you know, Julie, you called out control, you know, and it's a way of trying to be in control of situations and people, and, you know, holding myself separate. I've seen that a lot in some relationships recently, that if I can be the fixer or the knower, then I can be separate. So that's been very a big part of my journey recently. So yeah. And they will, oh my goodness, if I can just get out of their way, it's just so great. And so great. I was thinking about, you know, the movie Groundhog Day, of course, right? And I was so shocked because I was talking to my husband and I was like, "Oh yeah, I had this great, just these thoughts about that movie," and he said he hasn't seen it, and he hasn't seen it all the way through, and I'm like, "Oh my God, you're 54 and you haven't seen that movie all the way through." So we are going to watch it together. But I really got this deep feeling sense of how he really got it at the end, right? But it was really through his letting go, you know, and his not wanting to control and manipulate and think he had to get stuff. And when he really just surrendered, he changed his core vibration, right? If you want to do a little talk vibration, he just changed that core aspect of himself, and then things just flowed to him in the end, and he was just brimming with loveliness. So I don't know, that was great realization today.
amazing.
So
Well,
cool.
I think we're going to wrap up the show, and I just want to ask both of my panelists, and I'm sorry we lost Zahra. I want to ask you both if you had any final thoughts about connected learning and connected families.
You want to go, Julie, since I was just put.
Oh, sure. Any final thoughts? You know what quote comes to mind? I love quotes, so they're always popping in my head, out of my heart. I don't know. But I think it's Howard Thurman. Don't ask yourself what the world needs. What is it again? Ask yourself what makes you come alive. And go do that. Because the world needs people who have come alive. And so I think the only way we can truly be alive and connected to our own soul is to take that time, take that breath, be in the present. And in doing that, in stopping and pausing, unlike, you know, this frenetic world, we reconnect with ourselves, and then we can reconnect with others, because when we're feeling at peace and centered in who we really are, and we feel our own radiance and our own bigness in these little bodies, well, mine's smaller than yours, but in this littleness of the flesh, we feel a bigger sense when we just take that pause and we're in the present. And that's when that fire comes, that aliveness is present. And if it's present in us, our kids can see that, they can feel that. They want to live that too. And of course it works the opposite way, is that I watch them and I see how alive they are. And my son started skating about a year ago, and he and his friends got out on the ice, and oh my, every 3 seconds, boom, they were down on the ice, and then they got back up, and then boom, they're down. And I watched from the sidelines going, oh my, they hate this. We're never coming back. Well, they said they had such a great time and couldn't wait to go back the next week, and he's been skating for a year. And I look at that and I think, we fall down, we pick ourselves up, we fall down. But if we're doing it with passion and interest and aliveness, we're bringing our full spirit to the table. And if my kids are doing it and they're showing me when I fall down to, pick myself up, if I'm doing it so that when they're having an off day, they can see that in the mirror. I mean, we have, crappy days too where we mirror that for each other, but in those expansive times, in those times of growth and joy, that aliveness is contagious, and it's what we want to bring more into the world, that connectivity to our wholeness, our potential, our divine self. Then, we're golden. We're in.
That was so great. Yay. I was just breathing and just being the whole time you said that, so I don't want to add any more words to that.
Beautiful. Oh, beautiful. Thank you. How do you remember all these quotes? I read them, they go in, and then they go out.
I've been using quotes on my artwork since I was in my 20s. So they're just like in my flesh. I can't remember necessarily who said them. I probably don't quote them correctly, but the spirit of them is there. So essentially, they've just become a part of my own language, because other people's words, speak to me, and I'm so impressed when someone can sort of condense a feeling I've had, a thought I've had, into these beautiful sentences that I remember that. And I fall back on it when my own voice, isn't pulling the words together right. I can remember someone else's, so.
It's a talent. Josha, go ahead and give us the final words. What does connected families, connected parenting, and connected learning mean to you?
No, I really, I mean, I could be cliche and say there are no words, right? And I just love the aliveness that Julie brought, and she just really brought it. And I was honestly just breathing, and my heart feels kind of open right now. And that's my personal practice, is to breathe and be present in the presence of my my people. I call my kids my people sometimes. So I just love to do that, and that's what it's all about. Whether it's, if you are going to do some schooling this or some unschooling that, whatever, the core of it is just to connect with yourself, so you can connect with your kids. And like the airplane, you got to put on your mask first before you can do that for your kids.
Amen.
Perfect analogy to end this show with. Thank you so much. Both of you ladies are so inspirational, and you have no idea how much I was really looking forward to this conversation. My heart's a little broken that Zahra wasn't able to share her bit, but I hope to get her on a show very, very soon. So thank you both so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lainey. Thanks for putting it on.
Thank you. And wherever you are, whatever you do what you do, always for the love of learning. And we'll see you next week.